What remains above water? Today's Dunwich is a village of about 200 people, a few streets, a pub, some houses, the famous Flora tea room serving excellent fish and chips, a small museum, and ruins haunting reminders of what was lost. The most striking ruins are Greyfriars Monastery. Two impressive Gothic archways welcome visitors into Dunwich, fragments of the Franciscan friary that once stood in the city's east. Storms forced its relocation to the western boundary, where parts miraculously survive. Stand beneath those arches and feel the weight of time. These stones were quarried in the medieval period. Monks walked through these doorways. The arches have witnessed 700 years of history and stood against 700 years of North Sea storms. The monastery ruins sit in a field, partially preserved by English heritage. Walls project austere Gothic arches toward the sky. On sunny days, light streams through in dramatic patterns. The stones show evidence of their violent history: erosion marks, damage from collapsed portions, repairs from different eras. Nearby stands St. James Chapel, part of the medieval leper hospital. This small structure was built from salvaged masonry, a patchwork of stones from demolished buildings, each piece telling its own story of loss. St. James's interior is now bare but evocative. You can trace where the altar stood, where the sick and afflicted came seeking healing and spiritual comfort. The building is a quilt of architectural salvage, every stone mourning a vanished structure. The modern church of St. James was built in 1832 after All Saints was abandoned. It's modest compared to the medieval churches, reflecting Dunwich's diminished circumstances. But it serves the tiny community and houses a small museum about the village's history. Inside, you'll find that rescued gravestone from All Saints Jacob Forster's memorial, saved from the sea. Also preserved are historical photos, documents, and artifacts telling Dunwich's tragic story. The church itself stands as testimony. We're still here, diminished but not destroyed. The Dunwich Museum, housed in a former fisherman's cottage, is extraordinary. Though small, it's packed with information, artifacts, and most importantly, a detailed model showing Dunwich at its 13th century height. This model is eye-opening. You see the full extent of what was lost. The 18 churches, the maze of streets, the bustling market square, the harbor complex. Look at the model, then walk outside and stare at the sea. Under those waves lies everything the model shows. The museum displays Roman artifacts, Saxon remains, medieval pottery, coins, building fragments, physical evidence of Dunwich's long history. Each piece was found on the beach, excavated from the cliff, or rescued from erosion. Most poignant are the personal items. A medieval shoe. Fragments of pottery bearing fingerprints of the potter who made them 700 years ago. A child's toy. These weren't important objects. They're just the detritus of daily life, but they make the lost city personal. The beach itself is haunting. Its beautiful classic English coastline, shingle and sand, the sound of waves. National Trust signs mark it as protected land. Dog walkers enjoy it. Families visit. But look carefully and you see what others miss. Stones from medieval buildings scatter among the pebbles. At low tide, foundation stones sometimes emerge from the sand. After storms, artifacts wash up pottery shards, architectural fragments, occasionally something more significant. The cliff edge shows the geological violence. You can see layers of different materials exposed by erosion. In some places, you can trace where buildings once stood, now just voids in the cliff face. Coastal erosion signs warn visitors to stay back from the edge. The cliff is actively unstable. What seems solid can collapse without warning. This isn't historical erosion, it's ongoing, immediate, dangerous. Stand at the cliff edge carefully and look out to sea. Somewhere beneath those waves, approximately 500 meters offshore, lies the medieval market square. 800 meters out, St. Peter's Church. A kilometer distant, the old harbor works. It's dizzying to contemplate. You're standing where medieval Dunwich residents stood, but their homes, their churches, their entire lives lie far out to sea from here. The land has retreated that dramatically. On misty days, the atmosphere intensifies. The modern village seems to fade. The ruins stand starker. The sound of the sea dominates. It's easy to imagine medieval Dunwich, just out of sight, waiting beneath the waves. Dunwich in art and literature. Dunwich's tragic beauty has haunted artists, poets, and writers for centuries. The image of a lost city swallowed by the sea proves irresistible to creative minds. J.M.W. Turner, Britain's greatest landscape painter, visited Dunwich around 1830. His painting, Dunwich, Suffolk, captures the melancholy atmosphere. Turner shows ruins, stormy skies, threatening waves, the essence of romantic catastrophe. The painting isn't just documentation. It's emotion rendered in paint. Algernon Charles Swinburne wrote By the North Sea, a 7-section poem obsessed with Dunwich. The 6th section specifically evokes All Saints' Church and its graveyard collapsing into the waves. Swinburne takes an agnostic view of old Christian certainties, using Dunwich's decay to question permanence of faith itself. His description of the landscape as lonelier than ruin and the sea as stranger than death captures something essential about Dunwich. This isn't ordinary ruin. It's ongoing catastrophe, relentless loss, the slow consumption of human achievement by indifferent nature. Bernard Barton's Dunwich from 1822 meditates on transience among the ruins. The poem is forgotten now, but it shows how early 19th century writers were already fixated on Dunwich as a symbol of mortality and impermanence. Henry James visited and described the experience in typically eloquent prose. For James, Dunwich represented the ultimate meditation on time, change, and the fragility of human construction. Charles Keene, the Victorian cartoonist known for work in Punch, became obsessed with Dunwich. He visited repeatedly, staying for weeks. Friends described him as melancholic and eccentric. On the beach at night, he would play bagpipes, the mournful music drifting over waves covering the lost city. I enjoy Dunwich so much, Keene wrote in 1864. I can't help talking of next year directly I leave it. He returned for a final visit in old age, unable to part from the place that captured his imagination. He died months later, as if Dunwich had been his pilgrimage site. Edward Fitzgerald, famous for translating the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, spent summers at Dunwich. He walked the ruins of Greyfriars Monastery, imagining medieval monks pacing within the walls. For Fitzgerald, the air itself seemed imbued with memory and loss. 20th century poets continued the tradition. Ethel Wynne Candwell's Dunwich from 1928, Anthony Thwaites at Dunwich, and Wendy Mulford's Avant-Garde, the East Anglia sequence, all wrestle with the site's meaning. William de Morgan's novel, An Affair of Dishonor, references Dunwich. H. Rider Haggard's Red Eve sets scenes in 14th century Dunwich, imagining the city before its fall. The title character belongs to a Dunwich family watching their properties being destroyed by the sea. P.D. James set unnatural causes in the desolate Dunwich area. W.G. Sebald visited Dunwich during his walking tour of Suffolk, described in The Rings of Saturn. For Sebald, obsessed with memory and loss, Dunwich was perfect subject matter. Even music engages with Dunwich. Brian Eno's album, Ambient 4, On Land, concludes with Dunwich Beach, Autumn 1960. Eno merges layers of synthesized sound to recreate the beach's atmosphere, wind, waves, gulls, and underlying melancholy. Why this artistic obsession? Because Dunwich perfectly symbolizes themes artists perpetually explore: mortality, transience, nature's power, human vulnerability, the futility of resisting time, the democracy of ruin. It consumes great cities as easily as small towns. Dunwich isn't just a failed town, it's a meditation on existence itself. We build, thinking we create permanence. We establish cities, confident they'll endure. We accumulate wealth and status, imagining they matter. Then the waves come, and none of it means anything. The sea doesn't care about our achievements. Artists return to Dunwich because it makes abstract concepts concrete. Death and impermanence aren't theoretical when you're standing where a great city once thrived, now empty except for waves and wind. The lesson is visceral. Everything ends. Everything falls. Everything is claimed by time. Yet there's strange beauty in this. The ruins possess melancholy grandeur. The beach is genuinely lovely. The village endures in diminished form, but endures nonetheless. Dunwich teaches loss but also resilience. Lessons from a drowning city. Dunwich's story carries urgent relevance for our time. This isn't just medieval history. It's a warning about climate change, coastal management, and human hubris. First lesson: coastlines aren't permanent. The Suffolk coast is among Europe's fastest eroding shorelines. Dunwich loses land every year, as it has for 900 years. This process won't stop. It will likely accelerate. Across Britain, over 150 settlements have been lost to the North Sea in the past millennium. Dunwich is just the most famous. Each represents communities destroyed, families displaced, cultural heritage eliminated. Globally, coastal erosion threatens millions of people. Rising sea levels from climate change will accelerate what happened to Dunwich. Current projections suggest significant portions of coastal England will be underwater within 2 centuries. Bangladesh faces catastrophic flooding. Pacific island nations will disappear entirely. Florida's coastline retreats yearly. The Netherlands battles the sea with sophisticated engineering, but at enormous cost. Venice slowly sinks. New Orleans barely survives below sea level. These aren't future problems. They're current crises. And they're following Dunwich's pattern: gradual loss becoming catastrophic, economic decline following environmental damage, populations forced to relocate, heritage lost to the waves. Second lesson: engineering solutions have limits. Medieval Dunwich built dikes, walls, and defenses. They failed. Modern technology is more sophisticated, but the sea is patient and powerful. Eventually, nature wins. The Netherlands has fought the sea for centuries with some success. But this requires constant, expensive maintenance. It demands national commitment of resources. And even Dutch engineering can hold back the ocean indefinitely if sea levels rise significantly. Britain's current approach to coastal erosion is managed retreat, accepting that some areas can't be defended economically. Communities are being told to relocate. Properties are being abandoned to the sea. It's Dunwich on a modern timescale. Third lesson: economic consequences cascade. Dunwich's harbor blocking triggered population loss, which caused defense failure, which accelerated erosion, which drove more people away. This feedback loop is hard to break once started. Modern coastal communities face similar dynamics. Tourism declines when beaches erode. Property values crash when flooding becomes regular. Businesses relocate when infrastructure fails. Each change amplifies others, creating economic death spirals reminiscent of medieval Dunwich. Fourth lesson: political power doesn't prevent natural catastrophe. Dunwich sent representatives to Parliament for centuries after becoming a shell of its former self. Political influence couldn't rebuild the city or hold back the sea. Democracy doesn't control tides. This matters as modern cities face climate impacts. Political will and economic resources can delay catastrophe, but they can't prevent it if the underlying environmental forces are strong enough. Fifth lesson: cultural heritage can be lost permanently. 18 churches are beneath the waves. Countless medieval structures gone. Art, architecture, historical records all consumed by the sea. Once lost to erosion, recovery is nearly impossible. Museums and archaeologists work frantically to document threatened sites. Sonar mapping helps, but it's not the same as preserved structures. Future generations will know Dunwich existed, but won't experience it physically. This loss is happening globally. Rising seas threaten archaeological sites in Egypt, Greece, Italy, throughout the Mediterranean. Climate change endangers heritage sites from the Arctic to the tropics. Humanity's shared history faces elimination. Sixth lesson: displacement is traumatic. Medieval Dunwich residents didn't want to leave. They were forced out by circumstances beyond their control. Modern climate refugees will face similar trauma, losing homes, communities, and cultural connections. Estimates suggest climate change could displace hundreds of millions of people by century's end. These won't be willing migrants. They'll be climate refugees fleeing uninhabitable conditions, much like Dunwich's residents fleeing the advancing sea. Seventh lesson: some places can't be saved. This is perhaps the hardest truth. Not every city can be defended. Not every community can adapt. Sometimes survival means abandoning what you love and starting over elsewhere. Britain's Environment Agency maintains a list of areas that will be surrendered to the sea over coming decades. Communities already receive this news. Your village will not be defended. You need to relocate. The Dunwich story repeats. Finally, memory matters. Dunwich is remembered because people recorded its story, preserved its ruins, and told its tale to new generations. Without that effort, it would be just another forgotten place. This matters for modern threatened communities. Documenting their histories, preserving their stories, ensuring they're remembered. This becomes moral imperative as climate change creates new lost cities. The future of Dunwich. What happens next to Dunwich? The answer is both clear and sad. It continues disappearing. Current erosion rates average 4 to 6 feet per year along this coastline. Some years see more, especially during severe storms. The mathematics are brutal. At 6 feet per year, in 100 years, another 600 feet of land will be lost. The modern village sits dangerously close to the cliff edge. Several houses are in the erosion zone. Within decades, they'll be condemned. Within a century, they'll be rubble on the beach. Then there'll be underwater ruins like their medieval predecessors. Greyfriars Monastery ruins aren't immediately threatened, sitting further inland. But Further inland is relative. If erosion continues at current rates for 2 or 3 centuries, even these substantial ruins face the sea. Climate change will likely accelerate erosion. Rising sea levels mean higher storm surges. More powerful waves reach further inland. Increased winter rainfall destabilizes cliffs. Everything points toward faster loss, not slower. The UK Environment Agency classifies this stretch of coastline as no active intervention. That's bureaucratic language for, we're not defending it. Too expensive, too difficult. Not enough people or property to justify the cost. This means Dunwich is on its own. No seawalls will be built. No extensive defenses planned. The village will erode naturally until it's gone. The decision is pragmatic but brutal for current residents. Property blight already affects the village. Who buys a house that will fall into the sea within their lifetime? Who invests in a community with no future? Economic decline mirrors medieval Dunwich. People leave when they can. Property values collapse. Maintaining infrastructure becomes impossible. Yet people do still live there. Some are elderly, planning to stay until forced out. Others are defiant, accepting the risk. A few are fatalistic, enjoying what time remains. There's a certain romance to living in a doomed place, though it's less romantic when it's your actual home. Tourists still visit. The museum remains popular. Flora Tea Room serves excellent fish and chips. The pub thrives on weekends. National Trust promotes Dunwich Heath for walking. The ruins attract photographers and history enthusiasts. Decline is slow enough that normal life continues. But everyone knows the ultimate trajectory. In 50 years, Dunwich will be smaller. In 100 years, significantly diminished. In 200 years, possibly just ruins like those already beneath the waves. The question isn't if, but when. Some propose radical solutions. Create an offshore reef to slow waves. Build experimental flood defenses. Use cutting-edge coastal engineering. But the costs are astronomical for a village of 200 people. No government will fund it. The underwater city continues being studied. Each year brings new archaeological surveys, new discoveries, new understanding of medieval life. This research has value beyond Dunwich, teaching archaeologists how to study underwater sites globally. Ironically, the sea that destroyed Dunwich also preserved it. Underwater sites often survive better than land sites exposed to farming, construction, and development. Dunwich beneath the waves is more intact than many medieval sites on land. Climate change might accelerate Dunwich's final disappearance, but also create scientific urgency. Researchers race to map and document before crucial information is lost. Technology improves constantly. Sonar gets better, underwater cameras sharper, data analysis more sophisticated. The phantom church bells will never stop ringing in local imagination. Whether they're real or folklore doesn't matter. The legend captures an emotional truth. Dunwich refuses to stay silent, demands to be remembered, insists its story matters. Future generations will study Dunwich as a case study in coastal change, climate adaptation failure, and cultural loss. The city will serve as warning and lesson. See what happened here. This is what happens when you underestimate the sea.